I'm really happy to have you both here. Thank you for agreeing to meet and chat a little bit about this wonderful game that I really, really like. And I want to ask you first to present yourself. You present yourself, Misha, in Black Girls Gameworks as your friendly neighborhood ego striker. How do you do this? Like,
Uh, so so that's it's partly inside joke and partly true. A friend of mine, white guy, we've known each other for a while. He's the one. I'm the one that he asks a lot of these questions to, and so one day he's like, "I know you don't have to be an ego striker," and he meant to type ego stroker. I'm like, no, ego striker is pretty accurate, and so I kind of adopted it after that. I'm not afraid to pop his bubble when he's being completely wrong, and I do that for a lot of people. So that's what I mean by ego striker. Yeah, it's the one not being afraid to be the slightly brash, up in your face. Hey, no, you're wrong.
cool. No, that we all need a little bit of that.
Yeah, but in a nice way. I usually am polite about it. It's like, just a second.
So, does it connect with swashbuckling?
Yes, because it's not like full force fighter. Like, it's not just stomping in and smashing. It's choosing words diplomatically, and so it's a little more
It's sharp.
stylish. Yeah, a little more charming than just full. So a little more swashbuckly.
Right. And it is a feministic swash.
Oh, absolutely. And I am very much an intersectional feminist. I'm a Black woman. I don't want either feminism or the world to be just about white guys, or just about white people, or just about women, because some of us are not just those things.
Sure.
So
yeah. Well, I think this is really important, and but I want, if you have some insight and it comes to your mind during the interview, you can tell us, like, this is a really perfect point to to use this swashing. And what about you, Lizzie? You said you're a game designer, a journalist, and an author. How this all comes together?
Well, it explains how I first got into LARP, which was that I wrote this narrative nonfiction book about LARP. It kind of came across my desk. I got interested in it, and I pitched it as a book. And then because I had pitched it as a book, I had to get serious about learning all about LARP and role-playing games. And once I had been up to that for a little while, basically, I got into it. There's so many cool people doing role-playing stuff, and I think the world of game design is really interesting. Mm-hmm. So in kind of half my life, I write narrative nonfiction books. I wrote one after leaving Mundania that was about breast cancer, so nothing to do with gaming. But then in the other half of my life, I've kind of become a LARP expert. And through that, I've started doing quite a bit of experience design and game design for people. And I was telling both of you earlier before we were recording that it's taken over my freelance practice. So while I used to do mostly write articles for freelance work, now suddenly I'm doing more traveling and running of games and designing of games and writing about games for people. So that's kind of how they all come together. And I have always been really interested in experimental narratives, and I think that's really what drew me to LARP and tabletop gaming. Mm-hmm. Is that it's a different way of telling a story, and it's a different way of experiencing the stories that you tell. So I think it all, like, from the standpoint of being a writer, I feel like game design is about story as well as the actual writing part.
Yeah, I think so too. And when did feminism came to your life?
I've always kind of been a feminist. When I was a preschooler, I was very offended that I was supposed to pick pink frosting. My preschool you would go and make birthday cakes for people, and I was very offended that it was seemed to be expected that I would have pink frosting on my birthday cake. So I tried to buck the system, and I demanded blue frosting. And nobody was shaming me for this or anything. So for me, it came into my life very early. I remember watching the Transformers cartoon when I was 5 and being terrified that an adult would walk in the room. I literally thought the gender police were going to come and get me because Transformers is for boys.
Okay.
And that was just so clear to me, even when I was 5. So I think I've always had it. My grandma sent me a song that I had written when I was 8. And it's to the tune of "She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain," but I rewrote all of the lyrics to be "Can a woman be a doctor? Yes, she can."
Right.
And there were 10 verses. I mean, so I think I've kind of always had it in me. I don't like having expectations of who I should be or what I should be able to do to be prescribed for me. I mean, another way of saying it would be that I've always kind of had a problem with authority.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is something that connects with feminism.
Yeah.
For me.
For me, I would probably say it started before I was born. My mom joined the army because she didn't think it was fair that the guys were getting drafted and the women weren't. So yeah, we've always been there. Growing up, yeah, I did all the Transformers and G.I. Joe, and I played, my favorite was Vasquez. We would play aliens because we were weird. And I was Vasquez was my idol for the longest time, and yeah. So I also have giant problems with authority, which is why I didn't join the military. That and the getting up at 6 a.m. just doesn't work for me. So yeah, I've probably at least been bucking trends and fighting against that whole entrenched, pink is girl, blue is boy, and there are girl activities and boy activities since probably actually the doctors told my parents that I was going to be a boy in utero.
Mm.
They were very, very wrong.
Yes.
and I think my mom, she got a decent amount of boy stuff, at baby showers and stuff, but so she just used it because, screw it. It's here. I'm not buying different stuff. So yeah, it's pretty much been from day one.
Yeah. It's more or less similar for me. So my mother was also a feminist, and I really don't remember not being a feminist. No, I can remember I was in school, so maybe 12 or something like this, and the guys were having the whole play yard in the breaks to play football, and the girls should go to a corner and play with the rope. And I didn't wanted to play football, but I find that horrible. So I just got to the middle of the play yard and sit there. And they couldn't play football because I was sitting in the middle of the play yard, no? And some teacher came to me and said I wasn't allowed to sit. And I said, okay, you can try to take me out of here, but I will call my father, so you try to take me out of here by the force, no? And they changed the rules, okay, now everybody can do whatever they want. And I was like, that should be like this from the beginning.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, I would have played the football and I broke a guy, so.
I was the kid with asthma, so I would have just looked on.
No, I like it to play, but I'm.
Yeah,
I didn't like the way it was sorted out. No.
Yeah.
And how about personal preferences regarding to narrative and games? You were talking about experimental narrative. How it is how it is this done?
Yeah, well, I think acting out a narrative is by its nature kind of experimental. You never know where things will go. I mean, just comparing like games to literature. Right. And I like an innovative narrative tool set. In recent years, I've gotten really interested in games that use the body or that really consider the body strongly. So, for example, there's this Danish designer, Nina Rune Essendrop, and Simone Steen Hansen, and they made a game called White Death, where you play with no language, and your character is a physical restriction that you get. Like, you don't get a character sheet. When I played, my character was, your fingers always point at the floor, and your head is always to one side, never in the middle.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and during the course of the game, your physical restriction does get removed. But anyway, that was kind of a mind-blowing experience for me because of the way the physicality interacted with it. I also really like games that have a strong facilitator. I really like facilitating and sort of helping push the story forward, giving other people an alibi to go deeper than they might otherwise. Sometimes, you know, you need permission, or you need just like a little shove to get yourself deeper into a scene. And I like being the person who does that, of course, in a caring way and with love and with understanding of people's boundaries as well. So yeah, and I like I tend to like games that are set in the realist space, like fantasy is not particularly my thing, or like supernatural elements aren't particularly my thing. So that's what really gets me going. I want to experience stories set in the real world. I want to experience other ways of living, other mindsets. I want to kind of crawl inside characters that are different from me and understand what makes them tick and what part of them is also a part of me. And I think role-playing can do that in a way that's not always super kind. As I've played over the last few years, I've discovered some nice aspects of myself, but also some aspects of myself that are not so great. But I think, but I like having that self-knowledge.
Sure. It gets you to contact with some things that are not so present every day, no? So to name and to see things that are somehow hidden. It's for me some way the other way around. So I get more free when I play in a fantasy setting that when I go to the real thing, because in the real thing there is somehow this impulse of hiding and being normal or sociality some acceptable, and there is something that I quite find that the fantasy breaks for me, but
Yeah.
I understand it.
I guess for me, I find it more challenging to improvise in supernatural worlds. Like I can imagine what it is like to be a neurosurgeon in Paris in the 1920s, and I can improv from that. I find it harder to improv being, a ghost hunter in, pick your supernatural setting. And so I become more self-conscious, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm more of I prefer like the fantasy and the fantastical elements because I think I use it more as an escapism. And exploring stuff within the fiction of escapism than grounding in real life. Like some of my least favorite genres are the ones that are like modern day and real life. And it's like, I get enough of that normally. I don't want to do this when I'm playing. And it's a thing. Everybody's different. But yeah, like I read a lot of fan fiction, and I read a lot of just regular fiction, and so some of that makes it easier for me to do some of those improv-y things, like, oh, Ghost Hunter, okay, well, that's supernatural, and that's Winona Earp, and that's, this show over here, and okay, let's pull those elements in and go. So some of it is, I find it easier to take the real world and put a spin on it than to just play the real world.
Yeah, for me, it's mostly like this, but I found myself quite shocked from the amount of things I was experiencing with the feminism nano games that are mostly real world,
Mhm.
and the way they were making me feel or understand things about myself and the things that surround me. So I think you can get a lot of input from that.
Oh yeah. I mean, just reading. When we were editing, I read them all in a weekend, and this was before we had the teardrop system worked out and in place. And so, yeah, when you read like 4 like super heavy LARPs in a row, and you're like just bawling, in your basement while your kids are playing upstairs. Why did I do this to myself? What was I thinking? It makes it a little weird sometimes.
Yeah, I'll say also, like, I used to be more of a bleed hunter or like a cry hunter. And then it was like one day the day came when I had played enough games that made me cry really hard, and now I'm not as into it. But when I think I have the collection here, because I thought it might be useful to just look at the thing. But yeah, I was amazed at how deep some of these games go in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
Like, and part of the coolness of them, if it's not too immodest to say that the collection is cool, is the discussions that you have with people afterwards.
Yes, of course.
After playing or even after reading some of them.
Yeah, I think this is a really important part of the game. You cannot go and play and say, okay, see you next week. They really need to be discussed. And I think there is a lot of them. You cannot just play them. I think you need like to prep them and play something lighter before to get to know the people and somehow make an environment that makes the playing of the next one a bit safer.
Yeah.
But even some of the light ones can end up having like a super impact. Like and I love Lizzie's Manic Pixie Dream Girl Commandos for that reason. It just, you don't, it sounds like it's going to be this little light fluff piece, but when you're actually playing it, you think about it later, it's like,
But it ended up being way more intense to play than I ever imagined in my wildest dreams. And then when it's been out in the wild being played, yeah, there are a lot of things I didn't really intend come up, like boundary issues. How much is it okay to annoy a stranger is kind of left up in the air. And also, it's really uncomfortable for some people to play because you have to go out. This is sort of like a scavenger hunt game where you go out into the con and you get people to be playful with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. I have a great story about the orgasm gap.
Oh, yeah?
The very first game in the collection, First Date, where you discuss the orgasm gap. So I gave this to a friend who took it home and was going to play it with her roommates, and their male neighbor stumbled over. And then the first thing the game has you do is it has you read out this little text about with some stats about the orgasm gap, the fact that men have more orgasms than women, and and that there's an orgasm gap between women who identify as lesbian versus straight women. Lesbian women have significantly more orgasms than straight women, for example. So they read this section, and it made the neighbor dude so uncomfortable that he was like, "This has never happened to me," and then left. And so,
Sure,
But-
never happened to you, dude. Not at
so
all.
No.
and he was getting like more and more uncomfortable just having this information be read aloud. And so instead of playing the game, they just had a discussion about male fragility for like half an hour.
That is
Okay.
pretty much the perfect response to that statement.
Yeah. And that's a one teardrop game. That's maybe the lightest game in the book. Maybe. You might be able to make a case for some of the other ones. So I just thought that was really funny.
Oh yes. Really.
That's never
Right.
happened to me. Wow, you've been with some really good fakers then, sweetie.
So so that's Katrine Ford's game, and she did something right if just the introductory part is enough to have that kind of impact.
Well, I think they are all really powerful. I mean, the first one I played was Mentioning the Unmentionables. I played it several times, and even I choose it because it was like lighthearted and fun and short, and like having this diploma at the end of the game that I wrote for everybody was like a kind of a way of create a community and motivate people to play something harder the next time. But we got like hours of conversation afterwards, no? Like most of the players were also men, and their views about the period and the blood and this kind of things that was for me like, come on, I've given birth to a child, it's not really relevant, this kind of blood. And it was yeah.
No, I find it amusing that guys are so squeamish about menstrual blood, but they have no problem with like first-person shooters. It's like blood is blood, dude. It came out of my vagina. Oh no, now it's a taboo topic. But I'm gonna go and play Call of Duty for the next 6 hours is okay. I was like, what's the real difference here? Is it just because it came out of a vagina that makes it icky? I mean, is the vagina really that icky that you have to be so scared of it? I mean, come on, guys, work with me here.
I played Mentioning the Unmentionables, and I found there's one game that's about orgasms, talking about how you're dying for an orgasm. I found that really freeing to play. Just like the act of being able to say, first you say that you're dying for a cup of coffee. Yeah, and just being able to be like, I could really go for an orgasm right now. Just the act of saying that was very freeing. So there's something about the way the embodiment works in that game too that I think is really effective. And the same thing with the game that's about periods. Which one? I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Salt on it.
Put some salt on it. Yeah.
On it.
Yeah. Where I think that's like a huge fear for lots of women.
It starts when you're a kid, man. You have to wear a sweater around your waist because you're worried that you bled through. And
yeah. Can't be seen taking your bag to the bathroom because then everyone will know that you're menstruating.
Yeah. Or asking your friends to look at you if you are bleeding or not.
Yes. And especially when it's a new thing that's just happened to your body, there's this state of heightened paranoia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I find it really, really great. Like, I really would want to start. And online, it works really good too. I think it is a pity because I cannot play live, so there is a lot I cannot do. But I think this one it works really, really good online. For them.
Yeah, this is I bring hashtag feminism to cons a lot, just because it's easy to. I have the PDF on my phone usually. It's like, all right, we need something to do for the next half hour. How about we can play this one in that amount of time. And so it's easy to and then have a conversation about it over dinner or whatever while you're after when you're doing your debriefs, and some of the conversations, like you said, that spawn out of playing are just fascinating and fun and weird all at the same time. And it's
It's also nice that it's such an easy ask. If I was like, hey, do you want to play a game about feminism? It's 5 hours and it's going to make you cry a lot. Many people would be like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, oh, do you want to play a 10-minute game about feminism? You could do anything for 10 minutes. And if you hate it, by then the game will just be over.
Exactly. No problems.
So I think that like low ask is kind of critical to the mission of the anthology.
That's really good. Does your audience usually is more women, or you have mixtures of, or how is that in conventions?
There's been a big mixture. I think kind of depending on the place. Some conventions are very feminist friendly, or they have a lot of social policies that are inclusive and kind of progressive in nature. And I think at places where that's part of the larger convention culture, more men show up than in other spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I did get to take the anthology to, we got invited to E3, which is the enormous video game expo in LA, which was an overwhelmingly male environment. And it was kind of hilarious that our little teeny tiny print anthology was across the alleyway inside the expo center from the Ubisoft, like $2 million, like the booth cost $2 million.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. We were directly facing it. And we had this big sign that just said feminism, and Strix Beltran and I were standing behind it and fielding questions. And it was hilarious because we got kind of 3 different types of people to come by. A lot of women came by and were like, your anthology looks great, but I just needed like a 2-minute break from being in this overwhelmingly male environment. So we had quite a lot of women. We also had a lot of executives come by to tell us that like they were down with the mission and trying to persuade their boards of stuff. Somebody came by and was like, would you ever let video game companies submit to the next installation of this? So we had people coming by to tell us how progressive they were. And then we had some people coming by who were sort of veiled trolls. One guy asked us what feminism was. We explained it very nicely to him.
So
and he was like,
belief that women should have the same rights as men.
And he was like, oh, I didn't know that, and left.
Uh-huh.
It was like, So in an environment like that, the pool of people that we got was different. And of course, we weren't able to play the same kinds of games as we were. I think we launched the collection at Dreamation, was the first place where they were played. Yeah. And that was right before launch. And Misha, maybe you remember better than me, but I think we had a pretty good mix. And a lot of men who came because they wanted to be punished, kind of.
They were upset that we didn't punish them hard enough. I do think the first time we did like public play testing was definitely of the group at the collection as a whole was Dreamation 2014. 2016.
That was, yeah, that's when the book came out.
Okay, so yeah, I think that feels right. Was it only 2 years? And yeah, so the groups, I was not surprised by any of the people who did show up for that session. Just because it's very much the core community of gamers that I usually associate with. And yeah, they're all very progressive dudes. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been in that community in the first place. So, what I've seen since is with people I don't know as well, and being a little surprised that they're like, yes, I would like to play this. And some of the reaction to some other games that have come out with a feminist bent since, like Bluebeard's Bride as an example. I have seen multiple cons where the tables are all dude who want to play this game about feminist horror. And it's just fascinating. Or all dude Night Witches games, or all dude The Watch games. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, the people who are running, it's like, look, I kind of wanted to get a couple of women at the table, but apparently I can't do that because they just fill up so fast with the dudes. And it's like, what?
And
it's fascinating. Yeah.
And maybe that speaks to the desire of men to be cast as women, to understand more about what that experience is like. And the games are kind of invite you in, and most of them give permission. I think we have one that specifies that you should be a woman in order to play. We also have one that specifies that you should be a man in order to play. But most of the games are kind of inviting you to take on the thought, the internal mind working. Sorry, my brain still isn't working great. Of a woman, and I think that's valuable. It gives them an alibi to experience something that maybe they didn't feel comfortable trying to embody or experience in another setting.
Do you think that Manic Pixie Dream Girl works good with guys?
I do. I played it with some. Well, it was interesting. I ran it for some college students. I got asked to come and run a game for college class here in Boston, and that was one of the ones that we played. The guys didn't seem very comfortable doing the emotional labor. Manic Pixie Dream Girl Commandos is also kind of about the emotional labor of Manic Pixie Dream Girls, but by extension, women. So I thought they had a tougher time with it. They found it really hard and really challenging. And it was a play test when I played with them. And I kind of hadn't realized before that actually that's what the game is about. It's about the emotional labor of women in keeping social situations going.
Yeah.
So it can work well. Some guys will get into it asks you to take on some Manic Pixie Dream Girl physicality. You get a name, you get, you make up some handshakes and stuff like this. And you take and tweet an adorable group selfie. And watching some of the selfies come in on Twitter was truly delightful.
I find it plays, I don't want to say better or worse with guys, but I find it plays differently with guys. At least the couple times I've seen it played. Like Lizzie said, the guys are less willing to do the emotional labor parts, but are more willing to do some of the things that I find women have, like the bugging a complete stranger part. Guys have no problem doing that. Women have more of a problem doing that. But the accepting compliments well part, I find women seem to have a harder time doing that than men have accepting compliments. And so it's weird to see where the hang-ups are within the certain groups. Just watching it being played by different people. Like the lipstick print one, women are okay with that one, but dudes are only okay with it if it's from a woman, I find. Which it's like, and it's like, okay, so you have to get a guy to put on lipstick and give you a kiss on the cheek and leave a lipstick print. And that part was just fascinating to watch a couple of guys navigate one time. It's just like,
yeah.
It's like several layers of heteronormativity, right?
Right?
Like,
Yeah, you're breaking so many rules. What's really, really fun and awkward for the guy who is getting the kiss, no?
Yeah, and well, it's not just the guy who's getting the kiss, like, because I think it's you have to get lipstick prints from a stranger.
Yeah.
So it's the guy who's playing the game isn't even the one who's putting on the lipstick. You have to talk another guy to putting on lipstick and then giving you a kiss on the cheek.
It's like a much bigger ask than I thought it was. Also, like, keep in mind that I'm a journalist, and so when I designed this game, I'm really used to approaching strangers and being like, "Hey, would you like to give me your opinion?" They, when I was in grad school, they had me out in the Bronx reporting on crime, like in the South Bronx, and you just get really inured to approaching people who don't want to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the miscalculations I made when I wrote this game was I mistook my comfort level in approaching strangers with everybody else's, like, kind of like the average regular person comfort level.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what I might have designed a different game if I had really thought through the implications more heartily.
Well, I find it really, really funny. And I think the sense of sorority and an interconnection you can get with the girls you're playing with can be a really great thing to talk about. And because so for me, this archetype of the manic drink pixie girl can be really dark if it is only directed toward a romantic relationship, because then the whole emotional labor and the whole energy of this archetype is just sucked into a hole, no? But with when you connected it with other girls, then you are you retrofit your energy like the whole time, because you are giving it to to a web that is giving it back to you, and you get so much fun out of it. I think I have not played it, but this was something in my mind while reading it the whole time. Like, yeah, you're getting this and taking it up, no? Like really showing you the part that can be uplifting somehow.
Yeah, it was also a meaningful, it's a stereotype that gets applied to me a lot. People tell me, like, you have so much verve for life, or like stuff like that. And it's at once a compliment, but at the same time, like, I'm not here to inspire you. I'm a human, and I'd like to be treated like a human. Like, we can have a relationship, but my role in your life is not going to be to inspire you, or like, because that's not fair to me.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. So
I don't think anybody's called me a manic pixie dream girl.
Sure.
Let's think about that.
Nobody has called me one per se, but they've been like, "You're so full of life. I find it inspiring," or like, "You seem to like living and you have a lot of energy."
Well, not living sucks. So.
Yeah.
I also have death. You can go to hell.
Yeah. Or like, "You're quirky."
I get quirky a lot, which is great.
Yeah. No, it was really speaking to me because of the same reason, no? Like, oh, you are so inspiring, and I also have a really bad day.
And it's hard to turn it on. I mean, it can be on sometimes, but having it on all the time is
it is
or
also
having that
exhausting.
expectation all the time is exhausting.
Mm.
And then it's doubly dangerous because we're all women in gaming communities. And I feel like that stereotype just holds more sway in geek culture.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like yeah, you're expected to be more playful, no?
Yeah. You're expected to be the fun, cool girl. And if you're not being the cool girl, like, because you're having a bad day, it's not necessarily, it's not that it's unaccepted, but it's like, whoa, this is not the person I thought I knew. I was like, fuck you, I have bad days.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really love the collection, like you know, but one of the things that just brought me in for the first moment on was the prologue that I read it every time that I play it aloud, like one of my own statement, and I have it translated. I think if you like, I will read it aloud in Spanish one more time for the people who will hear us next week. So, somos feministas por necesidad. A pesar de nuestros talentos y habilidades, nuestra cultura nos pide una y otra vez hacernos pequeñas física, emocional e intelectualmente. Nos pide hacer trabajo extra sin quejarnos y dejar que otro se lleve el mérito. Somos feministas porque no aceptamos que el precio por ocupar un espacio denominado mujer sea la autoinvisibilización. Somos feministas porque creemos que todo ser humano debería tener la posibilidad de vivir su mayor potencial. En el mundo actual, esto es simplemente imposible. El sexismo nos oprime a todos. A la mujer que hace un segundo turno de trabajo en casa al llegar de su jornada laboral, al hombre cuyo amor paternal por su hijo es considerado sospechoso, o a la gente trans y queer cuyas identidades se borran del censo. Somos feministas que creen que la cultura que consumimos puede ayudarnos a empezar a deshacer los daños del sexismo. Y además, que esto es muy difícil, porque nuestra cultura y su consumo están inmersos en él. En el mundo literario hay un viejo refrán que dice que los libros sobre hombres hablan a la humanidad, mientras que los libros sobre mujeres son para mujeres. Esto también sucede en el mundo de los juegos de rol. Hay escenarios que van de 5 hombres que no hacen casi nada, que se llaman grandes juegos, mientras que escenarios que se concentran en las experiencias de las mujeres son para mujeres. Queremos expandir la etiqueta de gran juego para que incluya obras que hablen de las experiencias que hemos vivido. El feminismo tiene cabida en un juego porque las mujeres también son seres humanos. Esta colección ha sido producida para subrayar las voces feministas y crear espacio para un diseño feminista explícito. Nuestras diseñadoras tienen mucho material de donde coger. Desde un punto de vista lúdico, ¿cuál puede ser mejor fuente para crear material que un mundo que empuja a la gente en relaciones de poder verticales y tener en cuenta sus habilidades e intereses? Esta colección subraya diferentes aspectos de esas dinámicas de poder, desde la comedia de situación hasta la tragedia extrema. El nuestro es un feminismo inclusivo y plural. Invitamos a participantes de todos los géneros y experiencias roleras y aceptamos todos los juegos que nos trajeron. Pedimos a cada diseñadora que escribiera un juego sobre un aspecto del feminismo que fuera importante para él o ella en ese momento. En vez de entresacar de la colección para ajustarla a nuestra ideología, intentamos ayudar a cada autora a hacer posible su propia visión. Con alrededor de 3 docenas de diseñadoras, estos juegos representan muchos tipos de feminismos diferentes, reflejando cada uno a sus autores individuales. Como la feminista legendaria Bell Hooks escribió una vez, el feminismo es para todo el mundo. Nosotras queremos hacer estos juegos accesibles para jugadores de todos los géneros e ideologías. La barrera de entrada está bajada. Nuestros juegos requieren pocos participantes, poco atrezo y duran 1 hora o menos. Cubren un amplio rango de temas y sentimientos, así que podréis encontrar escenarios divertidos sobre la palabra vagina, drama alrededor de la mujer y escenarios duros de violación y violencia doméstica. Esperamos que estos juegos ayuden a generar discusión en tu comunidad y te inspiren personalmente a hacer tus propias obras feministas. I think you really wrote a good statement with that.
Thanks. It was cool to hear it in Spanish. It sounds so much more sonorous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. how did the idea of the anthology came to you?
Well, there are a lot of different answers to that question. One is that some of us had been involved in a convention called Festival in Denmark. And Festival is like the Sundance Film Festival, but for games. So it accepts only 30 games and it gives out prizes at the end of it. And it has a really long and storied scenario writing tradition. However, historically, there hadn't been that many women who had written games for it. And so part of the idea was to get accepted into this festival and use it as a Trojan horse to get a whole bunch of women into the festival. Everything kind of came together when Misha, Anna, who's our third editor, and I were at this small HouseCon, and we held a meeting to get ideas from people. And there ended up being way more enthusiasm. I thought maybe there would be like 6 games or 10 games or something, but there was way more enthusiasm from the anthology. And Anna Westerling, who is a Swedish designer, also has a lot of contacts in the Nordic countries. And so there is this idea of having more international involvement. So I'd say, and then kind of, I think the collection coalesced around the process we used to curate the community. One idea was to lower the barrier to having people design games. So to get some new designers in the collection, I think we did like pretty okay on that. We have some new designers in there. It would have been cool to have even more. So part of the way we curated the community and tried to protect ourselves from internet trolling was to have a policy of invitation. So there was the core group, and we told the core group they could give us like 3 email addresses, or I'm not even sure we put a limit on it, but some email addresses. And then anybody who submitted a game by the deadline was in. So the only requirement was that you actually design a game. And then we tried to help each of the games be its best, rather than having a curation process that was like, well, you can submit your game and then we will choose what we want. And we also, sort of through that process, we got hooked up with the incredible Shuo Meng, who gave our book a layout that's like, I don't know, 10 or 20 pay grades higher than a project like this probably deserved or could afford. So, and she made a lot of contributions to the editing of the collection as well. So we kind of had our organizer team in place, and we had this method for finding new people. But Misha and Anna and I met at a HouseCon, and that was kind of how we formed up. I think we had a meeting, and Misha was just like incredibly awesome at the meeting. We were like, Misha has to be on the organizing team. We need her. I don't know. That's how I remember it. Misha, do you have other memories? Or
I remember the HouseCon because and some of the people I knew from the HouseCon from before. I remember it's like, oh, here, let me grab my keyboard because I'm gonna need to write this shit down. But then through the process of like, okay, well, we have people who want to help, but they don't have time to write, but they have time to mentor. So we had an incredible group of people behind the scenes that were like helping people push their ideas forward. It's like, okay, I see how you did this. What if you did this instead? And, like helping them make little choices that made those games even better. And then the editing and it's like, all right, we're just gonna have to be tough. It's like, all right, we'll take anything as long as you get it in by this deadline, and we're gonna be kind of hard about that deadline because otherwise it'll take forever, and we don't have time, and we can't. And learning how to say no, I'm sorry, you can't do that.
yeah,
was a giant thing for us. At least for me. And then then just sitting down and reading them all and it's like, okay, here's some notes, and then sending them back and getting the back and forth went on for about a month, and then just putting it all together, and then Shuo bringing it to life with this like and there were lots of squeeze the like first couple of times when it was like, okay, so this is my idea, what do you think? It's like, I love that. There was a lot of that.
She gave us 3 gorgeous layouts to choose from, I should also say, and like all of them were stunning.
I know, and it was hard to pick. Well, actually, it wasn't as hard to pick as you would think, because I think we had very little disagreement about which ones we liked best. And so it just, it's like we had kind of a vision of what we kind of wanted it to be, and once we had that, it was easy to see which of those things fit into it best. But yeah, it was it was wild and fun and incredibly validating to work with everybody. And I could have done with shorter meetings, but other than that.
Well, Misha brings up a really good point, though, which is that the collective of people who made this collection happen is way bigger than just the game authors in the collection. Like, we had so many more volunteers. They also helped with stuff like copy editing, which was an insane process for this, because there were 33 games, which again, far more than we thought we would get. And
after the deadline, it's like, hey, I finally finished. It's like, sorry.
And a lot of them, most of them, I think, didn't have English as a first language, and their English was all very good. But when you get a native speaker to do the copy editing, they just uncover stuff. So having like a huge brigade of people. And then that was great when the collection came out, because we had a huge brigade of people who wanted to help spread the word and wanted to help support, like when we did our Indiegogo to fund the print run. And we still have like a group going. It's been really interesting to watch the collection travel to different places. We got a prize at, I think, at GaelCon in Ireland, like the Audience Choice Award, maybe. I'm not sure I'm quite getting that right. We've been played in, we've been played all over the world. Some of the games have been translated to Arabic and played in Ramallah, which was something I didn't really think would have happened. We've been played in Germany. I think there was a rare conference, a rare queer conference in Belarus, and we got played there.
Great.
And of course, like, there's been quite a lot of interest in our collection from Spain. We had La Mirada Gorgona had a beautiful weekend away that very well documented on her blog. Watching it travel has been part of has been a longer lasting joy than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I get to know it because of Mireia from La Mirada de la Gorgona. And it was really, really great for me that she introduced me to that. I really, really like it. And how it is now with the Spanish translation. So it is, you can already buy it, but it is also with an association of women that are kind of bringing the LARPs to educational and this kind of things, no? Or it had been, because there is like two ways to buy it, or somehow.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about it, because by the time the Spanish translation came along, we had our second run publisher, Pelgrane Press, and they did most of the negotiations, but we got approached by a couple people, and the Spanish translation is the result, which is cool. And I think that group has translated some other indie games. So we had friends who had games translated to them, I think, if I'm remembering right.
It sounds right.
Yes. I think I don't know the insights either. I thought maybe you know, but it is like a role game group that is doing the book. Actually, you can already buy it, but there was also like a crowdfunding system from some group of feministics girls that have been using the English book to present it into schools and different activities with them. And I didn't know how they two came together to the idea of translating the book.
Yeah, I think they probably came at it separately. Because we have like we had a couple of people approach us about translating some of the games into Japanese and into other things so that they could use it. And we pretty much had initially we had the policy before Pelgrane came into the picture of like, if you're if you want to do a couple of games, cool, here, let me put you in touch with the individual authors, because we did let the individual authors retain their copyright to their individual games. If you want to do the collection as a whole, we're gonna have to have a longer conversation, but we've kind of been happy to see it out in the wild more so than trying to control who's translating what. And just letting it go with that, kind of go organically. And
Pelgrane's been really supportive of that as well. I have the feeling that it's also a passion project for them. One of the top honchos at Pelgrane is Kat Tobin, who also contributed to the collection. Mm-hmm. And she very much also wants to see it out in the wild. So they've been really generous, and we've had a really positive experience working with them.
Right. Yeah. Well, I like most of the games they make. So
yeah. Oh, and they commissioned 5 or 6 new games. 6, yes.
Yeah.
From people that we would have loved to have in the original collection, but it just didn't happen for one reason or another. So it's been delightful to see those games going out into the world.
A game in less than 3 months right before the holidays. Oh yeah, baby.
Yeah.
Right. Are you planning to do more, or is like, okay, we are now working in something different?
I think we all decided after we finished this one that if we were ever going to do it again, we'd have to get paid.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was like having a second full-time job for 10 months, a year, even. Yeah.
And B, it would have to be something we really, really, really felt strongly about. For example, I know there's someone else is spearheading one called #Resistance, which is also with a feminist bent, but it's a little more political in nature, of addressing issues that are feminist but are not necessarily just feminist. More immigration issues and things like that, as well as the standard equality among sexes. And we were approached and we're like, yeah, you want to do that? Go for it. I can't right now because I don't know if I can put myself through that right now, because this really was a labor of love, but it was definitely a labor.
It was definitely a labor, and if we had to go back and do it again, I think we would design the project to pay people, and that would have necessitated some different bits of the infrastructure. But frankly, I can't afford to spend that much free labor on something.
Sure.
So hey.
But it is good enough to be paid. So
and when we first conceived of the project, it was definitely more of an experiment than a necessarily well thought out game process. Like having designed games since and designing games now, it's like, all right, let's back up. We're gonna do this a different way. So I on the one hand, I'm very grateful because I did learn some things not to do. Like ask 40 people to write a game, for one thing. But just things like how do we deal with royalties and stuff like that would have been a nightmare if we had tried to do the design that way from the get-go. none of us have really, all the money, the proceeds that have come from the sale, we've been donating them. We've, some of them are just sitting in a bank account somewhere. So yeah, the initial authors didn't get paid anything. The the team behind it didn't get paid. The editors didn't paid. None of. So if we were to do it again, and if I were to say, all right, we're gonna start, like, all right, we're gonna pay you X number of dollars to design a game for us. And then, we wouldn't have to worry about things like, okay, how do I split royalties between 33 different people? And stuff like that. So there were a lot of lessons learned, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, I don't think I could put myself through this exact process again.
Yeah, we designed the process differently.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think what maybe it's just because I'm too optimistic or because I'm in love with the theme, but I have the feeling that that there is a market for this right now. So and you already did the first steps with this collection. So maybe it's a good way to say, okay, we will get paid for this when we design something different, maybe larger games and not so many, so you don't have so many authors. I don't know, a complete different way, but there is a need for this, I think, for this kind of narratives.
I think if I was going to do it again, I would want to get more specific with the premise. The premise we had, I think, worked great for the moment in time that we were. Sort of general games about feminism. One thing that was interesting as we were going through this process was to see how different actually the core feminist issues are in different places.
Mm-hmm.
The fight that people are fighting in Sweden is different from the fight people are fighting in many places in the US. And so finding principles, like talking about the opening statement, finding principles we could all agree on, that was about as specific as we could get with, almost, I think, 40 people writing for the collection. But so I think it would be interesting to see more more specific collections around a more specific types of feminism, like a collection about motherhood, or a collection that's is addressing one specific intersection in the network of feminism, or even just one type of feminism. Yeah. So in a way, like, the generality, I think, was a strength, but moving forward, now there's a collection that's general. It would be cool to see the games going like deeper.
Yeah, like specific.
And I think we are starting to see some of that. Like, just in the tabletop community, like I was saying earlier, like, the Watch is a very subversive way of talking about toxic masculinity and feminism that's so spot on and beautifully done. Bluebeard's Bride is a way of
it is really beautiful
about the spousal abuse and domestic violence and some of those gaslighting and some of those issues that people face. Night Witches is a great. It's both a treatise showing women in war and also how the shit they had to deal with on their off time because they were women fighting in war. So I think we are seeing stuff come out, both of the core of the designers that were doing #feminism, but also those that were inspired by it. So I just, they aren't coming out in collections, which is cool. They're coming out as individual games themselves, and so I think we're still seeing the ripples from it, which is. But I don't know if there is a market for another general collection like this, because just agreeing on, all right, what is and is not going to be acceptable is a different level from one place to another. Like, we did start very early. It's like, all right, we are our intersections going to be our feminism is going to be intersectional, or it's not going to be at all. So we fortunately didn't have to turn away any games for being non-intersectional or being swerfy or turfy or anything like that. But
Although,
Hmm?
oh, we do have a game that has a turf as a character, but I think that's to discuss the turfiness. It's not like advancing a turfy viewpoint.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that out there.
But at the same time, there are so many views on feminism that I think you could make probably another, I don't know, 20, 30 collections just discussing specific issues. Like you could do so many things, like Glitzy Nails is a great one where it's like, all right, yes, both these women are feminists, but the way the client is experiencing feminism is very different than the way the nail technician is experiencing feminism.
Of
And
course.
exploring that dichotomy alone is like an entire collection of things that could spring up around it.
It's such an uncomfortable game to play, and I do get manicures sometimes, and I think about it every time.
It is really on point, no? So I haven't played, but I read what the La Mirada de la Gorgona did, and I read the game, and it was like, okay, so uncomfortable.
And as a person who likes getting manicures, it's like, all right, I suck at doing my own fingernails. I cannot do it myself. If I want them done, I have to go and get them done. And I've got this weird split that I've had for over 10 years. And so I have to go and get them done like on a semi-regular basis. And it's like, all right, so I'm going to be polite. I'm not going to be a bitch. I'm not going to be a pain in the ass. I'm going to be nice. And as someone who's worked in the service industry too, like I was a server for 10, 15 years on and off. It's being able to put yourself in those shoes. It can be very uncomfortable for some people. And so just having that kind of thing open your eyes, just thinking about it, sometimes you can kind of see the light bulb go off when people are playing the first time. And it's like, and it's kind of fun and fascinating at the same time to see those light bulbs.
Also, I think we should say a little bit about the game for the people who hear us and doesn't know about it. It is can you tell us, Lizzie?
Sure. It's a game about getting a manicure and giving a manicure. You play a woman. You play women. You play women who work in the nail salon, who are immigrants and doing this job to feed their kids. And I believe you had like a different, more status-driven profession in the place where you came from, but the only place you can get work here in this country that you've immigrated to is as a nail technician. And you play a wealthy woman coming to the salon to get a manicure, who has been experiencing job harassment at her workplace. The technician gives the client a manicure, and then there's this mechanic where every time, where there are two tip jars, there's an emotional labor jar and there's like a monetary tip jar. Every time the nail technician does something the client likes, the client puts money into the money tip jar. And every time the nail technician does something that the client doesn't like, she takes money out of the tip jar. By the same token, every time the client does something that causes the nail technician to have to do emotional labor, she puts a token into the emotional labor jar. And every time the client does something that makes it easier on the nail technician, she takes something out of the emotional tip jar. And then at the end of the manicure, you can compare like the actual money to the actual emotional labor performed. So that's pretty interesting. I was just also going to say the New York Times had an expose about nail salons in the years after this game was written that talked about how a lot of the cheap manicures in New York are basically run on slave labor. I mean, it's like wage slavery. The working conditions are horrific definitely go to the New York Times and read that. I think it was a 4-part investigative series. I was appalled when I read about it. But Kat Jones, who wrote Glitzy Nails, based it on a sociological study of a nail salon called also called Glitzy Nails. Not the nail salon in the sociological study, not the paper written about it.
Yeah, I think it is really important as feminists in a more or less wealthy position to think about what the results of our actions are. No, if you call yourself a feminist, but you employ someone at home without insurance and pay black, no, and you employ a woman, like usually, and you engage yourself in kind of activities in where other women are having a really hard time, you should somehow consider and rethink your feministic ideas, no, and try to go farther and to go where it counts, like where you can really be helping other people. And I think the game can make it really easy to grasp, the idea of what you are actually doing.
Yeah, and there's the interesting statistic that gets passed around a lot of women make 78% of what men do is kind of a misleading statistic. It's white women make 78% of what all men do. But if you break it down further along, both along racial lines, and like if you compare white men to say black women, the numbers are vastly different than 78%. Or if you compare white women with black men, the numbers are different, but not the way you'd think. And so sometimes just even thinking about that when you're considering some of the larger statistics, it's like, yes, if I'm a white woman, I might get along these axes, there will be some issues, but also you have to consider, hey, there's more than just male female as an axis, and just because you have you're disadvantaged along one axis, because you're a woman, doesn't mean you don't have advantages over people on other axes, like education and socioeconomic status and things like that.
Sure. Yeah, you cannot disaggregate because you cannot just split a person.
I cannot not stop being black or stop being a woman. I can only be both black and a woman.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like our collection on intersectionality, I think we did okay. But I would be interested but I think we could have done better. Or like, I hope that the next collection or the next group that comes along and writes games about this does even more. I would say there are a couple of games in our collection that are truly intersectional. And I would be interested. There's just a lot to mine. That's the thing, is like, these 34 games were like people's first thought of making a game about feminism, but like there's like a virtually infinite slate of unwritten games that could be written and that should be written on this topic too.
Yeah, and again, consider we put this collection together in less than 6 months. So we had the initial meeting at SanCon in September, and I think the first deadline was before Thanksgiving. So early mid-November, because I did a lot of reading of I did the reading of all the games the weekend before Thanksgiving. So we're talking, that's 2 months. We asked people to come up with a full game in 2 months. That we got 34 is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
So what? And that 34 amazing games is just fascinating. So if we had said, all right, hey, we're gonna take writers, we're gonna give them a year. the amount of stuff that I would expect to come out of it, I could easily see being like, a series of collections. It's like, all right, we're gonna instead of having 4 games in a group, I could see us having like another, hey, here's the 30 games about body, here's the 30 games about social consequences, here's the 30 games about menstruation, here's the 30, I could see that happening if we had more time and more
I would really go for it.
Yeah.
I just don't have that kind of time anymore. We'll see what happens when the kids are older.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only have 6 hours of childcare a week right now, so.
Yeah, mine are now both in school, and they're starting to. So they're past the age where it's like, all right, we can take you to school and do daycare for X number of hours, and now they're at the stage where it's like, Mom, I want to do this activity and this activity and this activity. It's like, all right, great. So now somebody's got to be a chauffeur. So
yeah,
fun.
And what about this kind of people? Do you encounter then that just keep on thinking this is a game for women? And most of so I get sometimes also the question like, is this really a game? Like, it is even worse like to hear, but get you around these opinions or are not coming to you?
So I'd have to go looking for them to find them. Like, I have my social media circles curated fairly well so that I don't encounter trolls of that magnitude. But like, if you like look up #feminism on Reddit, there are some very disheartening threads out there. But yeah, I would have to go looking for them to find those kinds of comments, because I do have mine curated fairly well.
I have many opinions about that critique. One of which is that "is it a game" is one of the least interesting things I think you can say about the collection. If we go by the like the academic definitions of games as being something that have win conditions, then no, they're not games, but neither are most RPGs or LARPs. They are, however, play. Yeah, and what I want when I get together with a group of friends is I want play. Actually, I prefer to play and not to play a game because I hate games that have winners. So I feel kind of secretly pleased. And I also feel that the what you call it by is not as important as whether it provides an interesting experience.
Yeah, that's a really good answer, I think. And what do you think about translating the language of the LARP to an online experience, like Hangout experience?
Go for it. If you can make that work, great. I mean, like, you couldn't do glitzy nails online. Yeah, you can't paint it. Yeah. So some of them are going to translate great. Like Shutdown to Launch would translate just swimmingly to online.
So would So Mom, I Made This Sex Tape?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done that online, and it was really fun. Yeah.
Let's see.
The last tweet I could see translating to which. And I was talking to the author the other day. She's like, I am so upset that my game is a reality.
Oh yeah. I think Something to Drink with That, Sir, and Ma, Can I Help You with That might translate pretty well. How to Be Ava White would translate really well. So would President. And I think The Gray Zone needs to be played in person. Sorry, I just have the
I'm
family
for that.
Family Planning Clinic would work great. Tour of Duty might work okay if you want a 5 teardrop game.
Yeah, let's
Lipstick.
Lipstick is
60-16 might work okay. Flirt would work great because flirt is kind of best played while you're doing something else.
Yes, why?
Because usually when you're flirting with somebody, you aren't just sitting around and obviously trying to flirt with them. You're like going
Pretending
to get ice
do
cream.
something. Okay.
Yeah.
So flirt is my favorite game because I don't actually know how to flirt. And so I missed apparently so many signals when I was dating. And now that I'm married, I don't have to worry about it. So I still miss all the signals. Like, I can tell when somebody's flirting with somebody else, but if you're flirting with me, I'm always like, huh, what?
Well, it's really challenging. There's all this misdirection. When I played it, I was girl, and I guessed wrong about who was I had no idea who was trying to flirt with me. It seemed like everybody was trying to flirt with me, but only one person was flirt.
Yeah, and if you look at it from I have to figure out who's trying to flirt with me, it totally changes the experience of flirting. Like, most of the time, you don't necessarily know somebody is flirting with you. At least, okay, I don't know when somebody's trying to flirt with me. So yeah, it's a fun game, and I could see trying to fit that into something else.
Let's talk a bit about the game so the people can understand us. It is the girls' aim. So we have the girl, the flirt, the girl's secret friends, and the flirt's friends goal. No, we have 4 characters.
Yes,
it's kind of like a game of werewolf.
One night ultimate werewolf. Really, I can say that.
Thank you. Or like mafia. So one person is the girl, and girl is trying to figure out who's trying to flirt with them, but doesn't know who anybody else is. Flirt has some friends who are trying to like run interference and help flirt not seem too obvious. And then girl has a friend who's trying to help her figure out who's flirting with her, but girl doesn't know who her secret friend is, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating and fun, and it's, yeah, I could totally see it doing well online.
Yeah.
Or just like, again, it is really a game that's best played when you're doing something else, because if you're just obviously trying to flirt, or obviously trying to, or not obviously trying to flirt but running interference so you can't figure out the flirt, and it does turn into a game of werewolf pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my sister Malala would also work online.
You're like, Manic Pixie Dream Girl Command is not so much online.
No.
Same with, I don't know, selfie.
I think, yeah, you can't do the win conditions for selfie. That's the only thing I can think of. It would be better in person, but you could.
Yeah, you can tweak it to instead of raising a finger, like whenever somebody pings the chat room or something.
Yeah.
And what's your favorite game? And why?
That's like asking someone to choose among their children.
It really depends on what mood I'm in, like, and what I'm looking for. If I'm just looking for something light and just kind of weird, or, something to do for a few minutes. First date, I actually like a lot. If I'm trying to get a slightly deeper experience, Glitzy Nails is in there. And if I'm trying to get the work experience of a lot of women, especially in STEM, across, Shout Down to Launch is great for that. Especially the way you do the castings for that, and deciding who which group is, and getting the frustration some of us have of like, look, I already said that. No, really, I already said that 20 minutes ago. Nope, I already said that. Yeah, I already said that. Across, it's brilliant for that. So I don't have a favorite. I have several favorites.
I haven't played all of them, but one that's a great introductory game is Selfie, which is about taking selfies and emotions, and it's about kind of reclaiming the artistic value of a format that's been devalued through its association with women.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and there are some, yeah.
There's like, I think there's a quote. It's like, people like to deride selfies as vain and frivolous, but all those portraits you see of all those old white guys on the wall are just frickin' are just giant selfies. They're giant odes to themselves. So we like to say that selfies are this, manifestation of how self-absorbed young women have become. It's like, no, people have always been a little self-absorbed. There's usually the people who had money who could afford to show you it off before.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's some games I haven't played, but I would really like to try. Like going back to my love of using the body as a playing piece, I'm quite interested to try Restrictions, which is a kind of a game of dancing, but gendered dancing. Even though you don't play men and women, you play like green people and red people.
This is great.
Yeah, I'd love to do just like a straight playthrough sometime. I think that would be hilarious to do at a convention. Just be like, this is going to be
start here, and we're just going to work our way through. We're going to play
Yeah.
every game.
Yeah. Well, I
First
think
slot, romance. Second slot, women in the media.
See, I think if you were going to do it, you'd have to mix it up some, because you can't you'd have to throw some of the light ones in between some of the heavy ones. Otherwise, it would just break somebody like me.
Yeah. There are some games that I'm afraid to play in here too. Like First Joyful Mystery looks really intense. I haven't played it. It's about abortion in Ireland. Or like any of the ones in the last chapter. I'd be really interested to be part of a game for boys, which is about where cis men play female victims of violence with an audience of women.
Yeah, must be really interesting. I've played it, but actually not so good, because I had not a really big audience of women, and they wanted to participate, and somehow it didn't conduct it so smooth that it could be only with the guys playing and the girls watching.
But it's okay to hack these games and make them fit your group.
Yeah, yes. You need to be flexible somehow.
But it will change the experience. I will.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I'm really curious about Flash, but I think this is a game you need to prepare. You cannot go and say, okay, let's play. I would not do it.
I would only play it with specific people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't play it with people randomly thrown in at a convention.
No, that was my point. That
We had a long conversation about Flesh when we were like, all right, do we want to? Are we sure we want to? And we did eventually come down on we'll keep it in. But yeah, that was the one game that gave us the most. Are we sure we want to put this here? It's just, it's like, are we really gonna ask people to lick each other?
Maybe we want to talk about it.
So Flesh, you write on your own body with water soluble ink, and you lick then the other players will lick the words off you while narrating why the word that you wrote isn't important.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those, there's enough factors in there that make me uncomfortable. It's like, all right, you want me to let people lick me. You want me to let people who are not my husband lick me. You want me to let people, and it's like, all right, I gotta do.
You want me to lick other people.
You want me to lick other people who are not my husband. It's like, yeah.
When Mireia told me about it, how they played it with POSIT. So you take the deposit with your mouth, but it is somehow not so boundary breaking like licking.
Posset being like a little candy.
No, like this kind of thing you can put
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what we decided to. It's like, all right, we're gonna either hack it with like, okay, you're gonna wipe it off instead of licking or something.
Yeah, but the designers were very insistent that licking needed to be part of it.
Okay.
But I think also part of the value of a collection like this is not just playing the games, but they're all kind of mini thought experiments. And so I thought from like a literary point of view, you know, maybe it wouldn't be the most played game in the collection, but it's a kind of interesting as a thought experiment. Yeah, it's talked about more often than it's played.
Sure. So let me see.
And yeah, the last chapter was hard to even read, so I have a
yes
playing them would be yeah so it would have to be a very carefully curated group.
Yeah. Well, just like for ending the interview, what kind of RPG project drives you nowadays? What are you working now on?
I'm working on a couple things. One is something that I'm working all with collaborators. So I have a collaborator in the interactive theater world, and we're working on a kind of Harry Potter immersive theater production that's going to revolve around, it's going to be set in a historic house here in Boston, and it's going to be about a magical creature conservation. So kind of a magical world. And then I have another project I'm working on that is about breakups. And that's not fully designed, but I have a collaborator, a Danish collaborator on that. And I'm working on I have a few other projects that might turn into something or not. And then lastly, I'm helping organize the Living Games Conference, which is going to be near me in Boston in May. And that will be a collection of people from LARP and LARP adjacent professions coming together to share knowledge and hopefully like push the hobby forward. And I'm really looking forward to that. There are a bunch of really interesting looking panels, and there are lots of cool people coming to town. So I'm excited to be part of that.
Right.
So I've got a few freelance projects that I'm working on. We're finishing up Nightingales, which is one about nursing, women nursing in war. And I just started a company with 2 other Black designers where we're trying to promote more marginalized voices, mostly in the tabletop community than the LARP community. It's called New Agenda Publishing, and we're working on getting our first game for that out, which hopefully will be in Q3, but we'll see.
Cool. Well, yeah, that's cool. I didn't know you were doing that, Misha. Do you have a website for that?
Yeah, it's newagendapublishing.com.
New Agenda Publishing. Mm-hmm. Right. And what's the game about? Can you tell
so the
something
game is called
about
Arun. It's kind of a Afrofuturistic take on the space opera genre. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna play people working for a government after people have ascended to some higher plane. But these are the stories about the people who haven't ascended yet, and why they haven't ascended, and what they do to help both the government and themselves, and crime lords and the church, and so it's kind of going to be a fun little take on space opera. We're hoping.
How do I address intersectionality there? How does this connect with the core of the game?
So one of the main things we tried to make sure of was that we're three Black designers, so we're starting from the approach of, okay, how do we make this world not all white men?
Mhm.
And then
Sure.
kind of building from there. It's like, all right, so from our choices in the art, our choices in what the different alien species are going to be like, what the who we're hiring to help write it and help edit it and help do the art and help do the things. We're trying to keep it I'm not going to say white guy free, but low white guy.
Yeah.
And so it's all about making very intentional choices. It's not colorblind casting, but it's color more like Hamilton. So it's not Hamilton is not colorblind because they're very specific about who they're choosing for the roles. They're specifically making sure that the roles that when they're choosing a role, an actor for a role, they are not just choosing a white guy. There are white guys in the production. Yeah, King George is a white guy, or they're in the backgrounds, but that the voices that they push to the fore are not white guys. Um, so we're trying to be very intentional in our choices there. So far it's the three of us. We're probably going to put out a call for writers and artists in the next couple of months. And so when we curate from that list, it'll be with that intention in mind.
Right.
That's awesome.
We hope so. I think so far we've had an interesting reception. We've had both the what about the white guys? Aren't you being racist? Are you being sexist? Like, no, we're not being racist or sexist because there's plenty of games out there that are made by white guys. If you want to make another one, go ahead, feel free. But for years the rallying cry has been, well, if you don't want, when people ask about diversity in games, people, the trolls especially, will say, well, if you don't like what you're seeing, go ahead and make your own. So we're making our own, and now the call is, well, why aren't there any white guys in it? It's like, well, you told us to make our own. We're making our own, and our own, and you have a lot of white guys. Deal.
Sure. No, I'm really convinced that you need to sometimes to close some spaces.
Yeah.
And that it is a lot of good things coming out there, and that you sometimes you close the space to create something that it will be for a bigger audience, and sometimes you just close the space, and what comes within it is private, and it is also valuable and necessary. So it should be like this. I mean, yeah. So I think we are coming to the end. I'm really, really happy to have talked to you for this couple of hours, and many thanks for being here. I will rule some games of feminism at the convention, and
And you've got to play
but
test your game, Iris.
oh yes,
Which looks
maybe
really cool, by the way.
yeah. Maybe I present it in this convention, but I think I don't know if it will have some kind of audience, but I will let you know.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Do you
Thanks so
want to
much
say
for having
something?
us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Something-
just thanks so much for having us. This was a lot of fun, and it's really exciting to to know that you've played these games and that you've enjoyed the collection. That's just, it warms the cockles of my cold, cold heart.
Great.
It's always great to see people enjoying something that you put a lot of work into, and so thanks for coming up and letting us know how you liked it.
Sure. Okay, then bye everybody.
Bye. Thanks so much.